Yep.
And I was like, wait, so I'm already doing what you do? And then I told you how when I was teaching music history, I flipped it backwards from how we were taught music history, which is, start in the 11th century or whatever. You would know better than me. Anyway,
Bunch of Hildegard, make your
yeah.
way up to
And
Harrington
it's
and Leonin.
like that's boring for kids. Like they hate it, especially like second graders. Come on, man. They care about two things, like football and farts, and that's about it. And so what I did was I started it's you laugh, but it's true. You are listening to the Music Ed Mentor podcast, where we teach music educators how to build, manage, and grow thriving school music programs and have long and happy careers. I am your host, Elisa Jansen-Jones, and today's episode is a pseudo-continuation of our conversation last time, which, if you missed it, was my buddy Steve Hawley and a whole discussion about incorporating pop music into your ensembles and classrooms. It was excellent, and if you missed it, it definitely is worth checking out. If you've attended a conference anywhere in the United States recently, you've probably seen a session being hosted by Little Kids Rock. If you haven't attended one, then you're actually a little bit like me. When I was presenting/attending the national conference a year and a half ago or so, I couldn't help but notice all of the sessions being hosted by Little Kids Rock and their branding everywhere. But even though I teach little kids, I wasn't that interested in turning my classes into a 25-piece rock band, and I just assumed they had nothing of value to teach me. Would it be worth my time to attend one of their sessions when I had so many other things I wanted to learn? Then, 6 months later, my Facebook feed blew up. It seemed that about 100 million of my friends, okay, I might be exaggerating there, were attending the Modern Band Summit in Fort Collins, Colorado. All these videos, photos, testimonials were blowing up my feed. All my friends were there, it felt like. And I was like, what on earth am I missing? These teachers were my colleagues teaching at schools just down the road. Their classes made up of students just like mine. What value could they have found at the Modern Band Summit put on by Little Kids Rock? Could it be more than it's just turning your class into a rock band, more than guitars and drums? Could it actually work in a class of 27 third graders? And if that's the case, what are they teaching? And could it benefit me? And if it could work for any class size, could it help in middle school, high school? What was it really all about? So, more than my curiosity was sparked, and I hope yours is too. I'll tell you now that I'm pretty much converted, even if not to the whole kit and caboodle, at least to the philosophy. And that's because of a single conversation I had with today's guest, Scott Burstein. We're going to answer all of those questions that I had originally and more with Scott, who is the director of this year's National Modern Band Honor Ensemble at the National Association for Music Education Conference in Florida. But first, we have to give a big shout out to Smart Music because they've done something completely crazy awesome. While Smart Music includes an unrivaled online repertoire library, there may be times when you wish to augment this music library with music you've created. After all, you know what's best for your students. Perhaps you've notated your own warm-ups, rhythm reading charts, exercises, or other resources that you use year after year. Or maybe you've decided that now's the time to begin creating your own customized classroom resources. Either way, Smart Music's new built-in notation tool, Compose, can help. With Compose, music educators can both create their own notation from scratch as well as import music they've made previously. Plus, Compose makes it easy to assign any content to students with full Smart Music accompaniment. Learn more about this incredibly innovative resource by visiting smartmusic.com and signing up for your teacher account to start using this resource in your classroom today. Now, get ready for an exciting paradigm shift with Scott Burstein. Why don't you start by introducing yourself? And you can't just say, I'm Scott with Little Kids Rock. You have to give us some bio.
Okay, well, I'm Scott from Little Kids Rock. Is that no? Oh, I need to do it more and again. Oh, okay. Take two. So I'm Scott, and I currently work for an organization called Little Kids Rock as their director of teaching and learning, which is a fancy way of saying I'm in charge of the curriculum and the training. But a little bit more about myself. I was a band teacher and an instrumental music teacher for 12 years in a public high school in Los Angeles. And I taught diverse classes like marching band and concert band, jazz band. I did a mariachi ensemble a couple times, AP music theory, which I taught a lot of and I really enjoyed because that's really where my degree is in music theory. But I always also taught a guitar class, which eventually became what we call a modern band class. And I'll talk more about what that actually means for those people that might not know soon. Basically, I did that for a long time and eventually took this position with Little Kids Rock about 6 years ago. And I also have a PhD in music education from the University of Southern California, primarily on looking at the effects that doing popular music had on my students. It was a retrospective study I did 10 years after they graduated. So, I've kind of touched a lot of different areas in the world of music education and music in general. My primary instrument is guitar, but I've played a multitude, especially since guitar wasn't available as an instrument of choice when I was a student. I hope that gives a little bit about who I am.
Yeah, that's thorough. It's perfect. I just like people to know why they should listen to you.
They shouldn't. They should turn the podcast off right now and wait for next week.
No, they shouldn't.
I mean, I will say that I think that one of the things that I have to offer is I've done a lot of stuff. Currently in my position at our organization, we work with about 3,000 teachers from around the country. When I say we work with them, that's what we do. Basically, the organization itself offers teacher training. We offer professional development. So we hold workshops in PD, and teachers come and see what we're all about. So we're not paying or hiring teachers. That's not what we do. We take teachers that are already in the classroom and give them some ideas on how to do other stuff. Primarily because most teachers that started teaching and got their degree did it with traditional courses and really didn't get to courses like popular music and modern band. So maybe it would help, instead of skirting around it, to actually discuss what modern band is. So modern band is a title for a type of repertoire and a type of instrumentation primarily. So in the same way that you have stuff like marching band and everyone knows what a marching band is, or concert band and everyone's kind of like, oh, I know what concert band is. It's got these instruments. Well, modern band's the same thing. It's really for large ensembles in the school. And what those large ensembles consist of is instrumentation that's primarily guitar, bass, drums, keyboards, vocals, technology of different types. Could have things like ukulele, which is extremely popular. Could also have some brass and strings in it. Doesn't have to. It also doesn't have to have all of those instruments. But basically, primarily, that's the makeup of those instruments in the repertoire choices that we like to think of as really kind of student-centered repertoire or culturally responsive. Fancy words for saying, what the kids want, what they're listening to in their out-of-school lives. That combination of those things makes up what modern band is. And it can look very different from school to school. So for instance, my guitar class, I would have considered a modern band because we did a lot of popular music in there, everything from rock to reggae to rap to heavy metal, country, whatever the kids come in and they say, I would love to learn this tune. What can we do? The goal would be to learn skills for it. So my guitar class was like that. And it was very different than my actual rock band class or modern band class, which incorporated drums and bass and vocalists as well. So we see all sorts of different modern bands around the country. So that's primarily what we do. We offer that kind of stuff and we have teachers that do it. So my background really is like, I did all the stuff, but one of the things I personally found in my own background is that when I started the job, I walked in and there was a couple of classes of beginning instruments, and then there was this tiny marching band, and I couldn't understand why, because it was high school. And then I shortly found out that in Los Angeles, they had this arts requirement. Every kid needed to take 1 year of arts. So I'd have these classes full of seniors that would be like, give me a clarinet and give me a D so I can graduate. That was like their aspiration. And so I'm trying to teach this class where there's a couple of ninth graders that were like never had music before, but they really were interested and they want to be in the marching band. And then, they made up maybe 10% or 20% of my class. The rest was just people like, whatever, man, just, I didn't feel like finger painting, so I'm coming here, which, I don't think is fair. I think all the arts are extremely important, but the way that they were portrayed in my school, and I think oftentimes in districts, is that it's like a requirement. So let's get our requirement out of the way. Immediately, I changed 2 of the 3 beginning instruments classes into guitar classes and just found it changed everything about my school. Our school all of a sudden became like Guitar University. You'd see kids on the lawn with guitars in the hallways everywhere, carrying their guitars around and jamming and stuff. And then meanwhile, my marching band went from about 20 kids to 80 kids in 3 years. And it's because all of a sudden my beginning instruments class was a class for the kids that wanted to learn other instruments. So I think that that's a really important feature of why we think modern band is important. It's really going to be a supplementary program that's going to help, bridge the gap. It's going to find those kids that aren't going to be in the music program anyways. I know a lot of teachers in the past have really expressed to us, well, if this comes to my school, then there goes, it's death to my orchestra and my choir. And we found the exact opposite has happened. In virtually every school we go to, the teacher responds a year or 2 years later and says, my kids are like, they learn music and they want to learn more music. And I know that was definitely what happened in my school. Half the guitar players wanted to eventually either join the marching band or the jazz band, play in the orchestra, sing in the choir. They got excited about music making, period.
That's super inspiring. I love the vision of a bunch of people walking around the halls with guitars and sitting out on the grass. And
yeah, well, it was especially cool because the school I taught at in Los Angeles was I believe is still the only one without gates surrounding the entire school. So I know that different schools are different in all over the country, but in Los Angeles, a lot of schools look like prisons. There are these huge gates that surround it. You have to go through security checkpoints to get in. So the school I taught at was actually the only one that has like this gorgeous lawn in the front that faces the main street in front of it. And so kids would just sit on the lawn in front of school. It was great.
So I have a confession.
Okay.
I first heard about Little Kids Rock when I went to the NAFME conference in Dallas in 2017.
Oh, okay.
And you guys were doing all these sessions, and I did not go to one.
Oh, man.
And now I wish that I had, okay, because here's what happened, right? So first of all, I was only there for a couple days, and I was presenting, so I was very busy, and I was networking, and I was recording a podcast episode while I was at the conference too, which if you haven't listened to was excellent, and you should go back and listen to it.
I'll put it on my list.
Yeah, but I was like, Little Kids Rock, like I didn't get it, and I didn't get it because I have this vision of what a quote unquote rock band is. Yeah. And I have about 25 kids per class, and I teach K8. Back then it was just K5. And so I was like, Little Kids Rock, that's got to be like for schools who can have 8 kids in a class. Like I couldn't get my head around why, like that's not for me. Right.
Well, this is, and I think this is a very typical misnomer with our company name, which, like, by the way, it's been our name for 19 years now. Yeah, so it's hard to take it. But the fact is, like, we don't just work with little kids, and we don't just work with rock music. The goal is K through 12 people who want to play, music, that music that drives them.
Right. So that takes me to when you and I first met, which was in San Antonio, and we had dinner together, remember?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have to check because we had margaritas too. So,
I won't admit to that. Mine was water.
Okay, yours was water. Mine was definitely margarita. And it was me and you, and then you had 3 like ambassadors from
Yeah.
who teach modern band there in Texas.
Yep. In
And they
Dallas.
were amazing people. Everybody that I met who was involved with Little Kids Rock was just so enthusiastic. But what really sold me on it was when you and I got talking about how I just implemented ukuleles because I wanted the kids to sing, but they weren't really singers. And so I started them, not on plucking individual notes. I was like, we're going to learn like 2 chords and we're going to do Maroon 5 because that's what they
Mhm.
were into. And like instantly you were like, well, that's what we do.
Yep.
And I was like, wait, so I'm already doing what you do? And then I told you how when I was teaching music history, I flipped it backwards from how we were taught music history, which is, start in the 11th century or whatever. You would know better than me. Anyway,
Bunch of Hildegard, make your
yeah.
way up to
And
Harrison
it's
and Leonin.
like that's boring for kids. Like they hate it, especially like second graders. Come on, man. They care about 2 things, like football and farts, and that's about it. And so what I did was I started it's you laugh, but it's true.
I wouldn't know. I mean, it doesn't change much in high school either, though. So
Oh well, that's good news. But yeah, when I started teaching it backwards, starting with the the things that they could relate to. I remember I did like John Williams, of course, but then
mhm.
John Williams led back to Aaron Copland because of the influence that
Mhm.
John Williams got from Aaron. Anyway, so that's why I wanted to have you on the episode was not just to sell us on modern band and Little Kids Rock, although I think I might be a convert. I'm just saying. Um, we have some work to do. But I wanted to talk because of the philosophy of this student-centered learning
Yeah.
and grabbing onto what the kids are into and building from there. And if we can just kind of squash some of those misconceptions, like me going, yeah, I can't do modern band because I have 25 kids in a class.
Right. No, and let me say, I mean, just to that point, my basically second to last year teaching, I started at a new school, and my guitar class was about 65, which I used modern band. I got some bass, and some drums and stuff like that, but it was huge, and that's like I'm an experienced teacher of this, so it was fine and it was great. I don't think 65 is the ideal number. Typically, I think like 40 is pushing it, but whatever, it can be done. I've seen enormous programs doing this. But I think that it's great that you mentioned that. And I do want to preface this with a little bit, because I want to dive into like just kind of a little bit about the philosophy of being a music educator, what we're really doing and why. But a lot of the things I say might come off as controversial or threatening or anything like that. I don't think I hope that they're taken with a grain of salt. Because first of all, anything that I comment on that I say I wouldn't do that or that I caution against are all things I did. They're all things I learned from by trial and error in the classroom. For instance, I'm a classical guitar player, and that's primarily what I play. So, when I started teaching guitar, the first thing I did was like, okay, guys, the first week you need to sit down in your chair and we're going to talk about the 7 elements of music, and then we're going to learn how to read on a music staff. And once you guys have achieved that, then you've proven to me that you've earned the right to learn how to play guitar. And so that was like my tactic. And I've had a lot of teachers say that's what they do too. And the thing I found, and I did this for a couple of years, it wasn't like I tried it once and quit, but it changed my perception as I started noticing every year what happened was the kids that struggled with this got left behind because, oh, I can't read music. Oh, I'm trying to learn, but it's just too hard for me. And now like all the other kids have guitars except for like 6 kids in the class, and they're sitting there still trying to pass their test, and they're falling further and further behind, which is like such a horrible way to like, it's like, hey, let's put you last. Let's make sure that you cannot be successful. Here's some roadblocks, which is really frustrating when I really thought about what I was doing to those kids and why. I don't know. And then they get their guitars out, and then it's like, okay, we're going to sit with proper positioning. Let's talk about your technique. Your thumb goes here. Here's, you're going to make sure that we're going to play everything with either, whoa, you're doing a free stroke instead of a rest stroke. That's a really big difference. We got to make sure that you're bending from the right knuckle of your finger, like all these things. And then meanwhile, you'd have these kids in your class that can already play guitar pretty well. And within like a day, they're like, forget this. I don't want to be in this class. I didn't think it was going to be like this. Like that was a huge thing for me to recognize. And the thing I did was I switched everything around to what we talk about now, which I'll discuss in a second. And once I did that, I found my retention rate was enormous. We were moving faster. We were learning harder materials. And it all did culminate in 2012, which was my last year teaching. I won an award from the Guitar Foundation of America as one of the top music educators for guitar, classical guitar specifically, in the country. There was 3 of us that got the award that year. I was one of them. I felt very honored to have that award. The fact is that my kids would get on stage and they'd play an 8-part version of Mozart's Lacrimosa, 42 kids on stage or whatever. And then like 2 nights later, we'd be having a battle of the bands and they'd be expected to get on stage and play Metallica and Red Hot Chili Peppers and whatever they were listening to. These kids learned how to do it all. And I know a lot of people say, well, if they learn one thing, they're not going to learn the other things. And that's just not how it happens. Or at least in my experience, it hasn't been, and the experience of the educators mostly that I work with. So what is the philosophy? I mean, I think that in music education, one of the things we find is we have these teachers, us, the chosen few that have gone through and played music our entire lives and then gotten a degree in it and then a credential in it. And then some of us have higher degrees. It's like we have all this wealth of experience and knowledge. And we're coming into a classroom and saying, okay, kids, I know you listen to music, but check this out. I want you to learn the music that you don't listen to, even though you don't have the skills yet. And we're going to I have all this knowledge, but instead of using my knowledge to figure out how to reach you, you're going to have to come to where I am. I think this is a very constant thing. We have repertoire we're going to learn. This is what I do in my concert band, and this is what I did in my marching band. And instead, the modern band teacher hopefully flips the script. They say, those kids, they don't play yet. They don't understand musical concepts yet. Why don't I take my extreme knowledge of how to learn music to listen to the songs they're listening to and figure out how I can teach it to them? Because it's going to be way easier for me to do that. And then those kids have something they're excited and engaged to learn, and we can attach that to all the musical things we want to make literate, comprehensive musicians. I think a lot of the knock that we hear from people that don't really understand what we do is that, oh, you guys just want to play fun pop music. Look, I think that if we have a student that approaches us in 9th grade and by 12th grade, all he can still do is play 3-chord rock songs, we failed. All music learning has to be, it's in the classroom for a reason because we find value in it. It has to be sequential. It should follow standards. There should be rubrics for your students so they know what they're supposed to be achieving. It just is, it's up to us as the music educators to figure out how to reach all of those with any type of music. Because I'm a firm believer that any song has value and has value to teach a variety of skills. It doesn't matter if I like it or not. As a matter of fact, I think that 90% of the time when I'm doing my job, I'm working on music I hate. But it's not about if I like it. It doesn't matter if I like it. It's a value judgment I personally am making, but I can find a million things in these songs that maybe I like or I don't like to teach a student. So I guess this kind of ties into what our core values are as an organization. And I think they're pretty important. But I'd like to kind of couch them in terms of, the national art standards, national core art standards, which say, we're supposed to be creating, performing, responding, and connecting. And I often wonder, how are we actually doing with that? And these are new standards. And I think that they reflect what happened before, but are a little more broad and can represent all sorts of different things. But the creative part of music making is the one that always, I think, has been relatively absent. Now, I had a great experience in music when I was in high school. I sang in the choir. I played in the marching band. I eventually was a drum major. I played in the concert band, learned the tuba to do that. It was fantastic. Played in the jazz band. And let me tell you something. 0% of what I did was creative. It was interpreting what the conductor was telling me what to do all of the time. And let me tell you something. There's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the skills I learned in those classes. I learned so much. It made me an amazing musician, and it made me a better human being. But creativity wasn't part of that. And I think it's fine to say that music doesn't have to be creative. But if we're following the national standards, it's number one. It's right there. It's the C. And So for me, I think that the top two core values we have as an organization are improvisation and composition. So how do we improvise and how do we compose? And we believe in teaching those as well as teaching, the resuscitation of works, like learning note for note how to play songs we love. But we learn how to interpret them, and then we learn how to improvise over them, and we can write our own songs. So those are all really important skills. The way we do this is by getting students in a comfort zone, and the comfort zone can be achieved by approximation, scaffolding, and student-centered instruction. So the student-centered instruction part's pretty easy. I mean, primarily it's like, hey, what do you guys want to learn? Let's learn it. But it's larger than just the repertoire. It's also like finding ways for the students to drive their own instruction, having them lead the class a bit, having them work in groups. And then approximation basically just means we're going to make the songs, easier. We're going to make them, or different. Maybe easier isn't the right word. We're going to basically make them different. They're not going to be actual note for note renditions of songs. What we're going to do is we're going to make it so that students can perform it at their level. But this isn't just, something that we're doing to make it easier. You could think of the way popular music works now. Like, if you get a song that just comes out on the radio that everybody's listening to, within 2 weeks, there's going to be 40 different versions of it on YouTube. They're all approximations. They're all different versions that people have made that speaks to their creativity. So I think that's really important. And we do that, but often it helps that we can make the songs easier so students can perform them. And by the way, this is done in classical music too, right? Like, what beginning instruments book doesn't have Ode to Joy in it? And it's not the same Ode to Joy. It's got the melody. There you go. 16 bars. We're done. A, B, A, So I think that it's the same sort of concept. And then scaffolding's the last one, which is the ability for kids to play at whatever level they're at and enjoy it. And this one I think is the most important because, like, imagine that I'm in a class and I could play a song really easy on the guitar if I just use 3 open chords. But there's a kid in the corner there that he learned a version that has these bar chords in it. And then there's another kid who's just like hearing it and he's like messing around with it, playing it like Jimi Hendrix style, where he's adding in all these cool colors and riffs. All those kids can play together at the same time. And the kid at the bottom of the ladder there, the kid that's really struggling and just learning from the basics, he's going to look up to those other kids and want to get there. And the kid at the top, who's often, the kid who's like maybe every other teacher in the school's, least favorite student, at least in my experience it was, the best guitar player was always the worst student, right? That kid, he's a leader in that class and everyone's looking up to him. And all of a sudden he has to act like a leader. And he's going to start working with them and teaching. So it's a really important social skill for these kids to learn. So anyways, that's my long rant about this. I'll let you get a word in.
I just want to back up a little and say, how much is this like Suzuki?
It's funny, like in the early days, we like to say that we're a little bit, if you took Suzuki and Orff and Dr. Seuss and the Beatles and you mash them all up, that's what we are. I mean, there's a lot of different concepts that are in here. So,
right. But the idea of I put these little dot stickers on the fretboard of the ukuleles as I've been experimenting with younger and younger grades to see how low we can go. Right.
Right.
And so I will say, okay, so take your ring finger and put it on the green dot, because they all know ring finger and they all know green. And they all know middle finger too. They know that one really, really well.
Yeah.
And
don't ask them to show you that one.
Right. And so it's like, okay, and then your middle finger on blue. And then once they get it down, I'm like, okay, so now when I want you to put your finger on the green one, that's your C chord. So now I'm not going to use the term green anymore. That's your C chord because that's the C note. If you pluck just that one, it's the C note. And this is what it looks like on the staff. And that makes more sense to them instead of me going the other way, which is this is what it looks like on the staff, and this is the chord diagram, and this is why it's a chord.
Yeah. Yep.
They already can play it, which is kind of the Suzuki approach. Teach them how to play it, and then the literacy will come.
Of course, yeah. And I think that's important to note because a lot of times people say to us, oh, this isn't that different than Orff. And I'm like, Yeah, it really isn't. And or if I think now is still working on folk songs, well, popular music today is the folk songs of today, right? And so it's kind of like we're working on the popular music of 150 years ago, oftentimes in different approaches you see. But yeah, we're very Orff-like in some ways. Like there are no wrong notes. We're going to show you the exact right notes to use, and you can experiment and explore with them. So I think that there's a lot of different learning theories that we get compared to, and it's all true. They all exist. But in reality, the primary thing we're built off of is Stephen Krashen's 5 hypotheses of language acquisition, which a lot of musicians aren't familiar with. But I should say that our company was founded, and our founder slash CEO, a man named Dave Wish, he was a elementary school, first grade English as a second language teacher. So basically, he wasn't a music teacher ever. He was like a kid that was a guitarist when he was 16 because like his buddies taught him a couple chords and he just jammed. Like so he was like an amateur musician, and he found that the school he was at, which was at the time when he was teaching, it was the murder capital of the United States in Palo Alto, California, and it was a rough school, and the kids had zero music. There was no music teacher at the school. So when he started it, he took his language acquisition theory, which is his background in learning other, speaking languages and stuff. And he applied it relatively unwittingly, but then he really thought about it. Wow, this is how I learned. He showed up the first day and said, okay, kids, tell me some songs you want to learn. Oh, you want to learn this Selena song? Cool. This Mark Anthony song? That's awesome. Hey, great. And then he taught it to them, and he found these first graders were like within a couple months were writing their own songs and performing them and just having a blast with it. So his approach, really comes down to these 5 hypotheses, which we talk about in music, and we discuss this as music as a second language. So I mean, I can go into those too for sure, but I don't
No,
want to like.
no, do because let's talk about music as a second language. How does that break down in your definition?
Well, so for us, there's 5 hypotheses to this, and the 5 hypotheses are based off of the language acquisition ones, which are basically learned versus acquired, the monitor, input plus one, the effective filter, and what's the one I am missing right now? The natural order hypothesis. But they're all basically, they can be summed up pretty easily, which is this.
I want to take a quick pause here because what Scott has to say about teaching music as a second language is profound. So good that it took more time than we had in this one episode. But because I feel it's so very important for you to know and to understand, something that can really change your effectiveness as a teacher, I was able to persuade Scott to make a little bonus episode for you. It's short, it's packed with content, and we just talk about music as a second language and using it as a concept for teaching. This isn't something you can just look up on YouTube or find anywhere else. It's pretty exclusive. So here's what you need to do. Go to smartmusic.com/blog and search for episode 46. On that page, you'll find therein a box to add your email. Do so, and you'll be given the bonus episode with Scott. Now, back to our regularly scheduled program.
People can find more information about these. Everything we do. I should have mentioned this at the outset, but everything we do is online and it's all free. We don't charge for things. So you could go to the Jam Zone with littlekidsrock.jamzone.org, and that's our website where all of our resources are. Like our workshop PowerPoints are there, like, a bunch of songs, videos on how to, and our entire teacher's manual, which you can actually download. It's like a 400-page manual you can download. And these things are all on there that discuss it.
I've already been on that website 3 times this week.
Did you find it useful? Give me how you used it this week.
I used it to pick songs for my middle school air quote choir class because I only have them for a couple more days before the end of the quarter. And so I'm like, you know what? We're not going to get like choir repertoire happening here. These children they have no idea. So I'm like, we'll just pull out the ukuleles and we'll learn a couple of songs. So I was just looking through there to see if there were some 2 and 3 chord songs that these kids would know and like and be comfortable enough doing. It's just 2 days of work. And then I opened it up for my guitar student as well. Same reason, just trying to find good stuff that they would recognize and enjoy. And I like how on there you have the song and the video and the chord download chart and a couple different versions of a lot of songs. And it's just really super easy to find what I was looking for. So thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I know that right now we're currently like, it's seeming like this is a shameless plug for the organization. It's really not. I like in reality.
To be
like,
fair, I have not been to your Modern Band Summit and I don't teach modern band and I'm not trained in modern band. And it's just, like I said, it's because I was already doing these things. And then when we talked about it, I was like, you know what? I'm already doing that.
Yeah, no, and that's the fact. People are doing this stuff already. And, it's funny, like when I taught, I got trained as a teacher for Little Kids Rock back in, I think, 2004.
Yeah, and then you were an ambassador for a while for them.
Yeah, but there was about 6 years where I was teaching. But like, to be honest, I never really used Little Kids Rock materials. They're still at the point where they're basically for beginning levels. There's not like you're going to find like the craziest, hardest songs on there for your advanced guitar kids. And being a guy that's played popular music for a long time, I had tons of resources on how to do it. The thing I took away from going to a workshop was the philosophy. It changed the way I thought about music. And that's what I care more about. I mean, I'm not trying to show for our organization here. What I really am trying to do is, discuss the concepts of what we look at when we're talking about music education. What is the goal of music education? Because I think that sometimes we take it as, like a fait accompli that everyone is going to, want to support music education in schools with their hard-earned tax dollars. And that's ridiculous. I mean, I remember standing out in front of the schools and having parents tell me how they think it's such a waste their kids are in my class instead of an important class. So to me, if the messaging is important, why are we doing this? Why is music education important? And I'll tell you the one thing that I say that is definitely not the view of Little Kids Rock. It's my view, which is that I don't actually care about teaching music. And I know that it comes off horrible. It sounds terrible. Everyone's like, all of your listeners just clicked off the radio.
I have like this shocked look on my face.
She does. She has a shocked look on her face. But it's not like, here's the thing. I believe in education. Education is what matters to me. The goal of making people better people. That's the goal. However, for many of us to get there, we had to go through something. And for many, many, many people, music should be it, or is it, or could be it and isn't it. But it definitely was for me. I mean, I was the worst in 7th and 8th and 9th grade. I was a terrible student. I was a bad kid. I was a kid you didn't want to have in your class. I wasn't paying attention. Lots of stuff. Like, I was not a good student. It wasn't until I got involved in music education that it turned my life around. Because while I was being such a bad kid, I was coming home, locking myself in my bedroom and playing a bunch of Guns N' Roses and Metallica riffs on my guitar. And so I was definitely learning, but I couldn't use that learning in school because the school I was at didn't have guitar. But think of who I am. And you know who I am, but your listeners probably don't. I'm white, male, upper middle class, grew up in the suburbs, Jewish. I had means. Both of my parents have PhDs in education and taught at universities. So like, I had all the things that you'd think, man, that kid's going to do well in life, right? I had all the privilege I could. And thank God I did, because that's the reason I survived. But why was I doing poorly? Because the things in life that I cared the most about were inessential in the views of education. I come to school, I want to learn music that speaks to me. Sorry, buddy, there's nothing like that here for you. And as a matter of fact, I only got involved in music education at all because I was told that I could join marching band. And if I joined marching band and played the big bass drum, I didn't have to take PE. So like, here I am now. The only reason I ever got involved in music education was to avoid physical exercise. That's pretty sad. Like, that's not a great thing, even especially since I was already playing and I loved it. And I think of all the high schools around the country where kids are coming in and maybe they haven't had music education until now. And they're like, well, what can I do now? And they're like, well, you want to be in the marching band, you have to play an instrument. You don't do it, so you're out of luck. You're already out of luck. There's no pathway for you to participate. So that's, I think, one of the reasons why, like going back to this concept of music education, It's what saved me with all my privilege. How many people out there aren't me? I know when I taught, most of my students weren't privileged in the same ways. They didn't have parents that could buy them instruments or that would get them a private teacher to support them. They didn't have parents that gave them time to like practice at home, because guess what? When you came home, you better get ready for your job that you're going to go work at for 4 or 5 hours a night, or take care of your brothers and sisters. Like, they just did not have the means. You can't play the drums at home. It's too loud. We live in an apartment with 2 bedrooms and 6 people. You can't play the drums at home. So where's their opportunity? And that's why this is so important to me. So when I say I don't care about music education, it's fake. Of course I do. But I want us all to remember as music educators that it's not about the music. Like, the music is fantastic. It's great. It changed my life. Every day I think about how important music is to me. But, it doesn't have a place in the schools unless it's going to be education. If it's going to give us a reason to want to be better people.
I'm just pausing so that can just sink in just a little bit.
Yeah, so people can find other podcasts to listen to. They're like, I hate this guy.
So here's my question. As a traditionalist by not just training, but I have one ensemble opportunity at my school, which is concert band. That's been the tradition. I tried to change it this year. It was no go. We have to do concert band. How can I apply this? Or, if I'm a traditional choir teacher or a traditional orchestra teacher, how can we use these concepts to create a more student-centered approach in our classroom?
Yeah, I think that you can. I mean, look, by the way, I also want to mention that I didn't. My concert band stayed very traditional, very formal. I chose the music. I was the sage on stage. And for me back then, and this was, now 7 years ago, like, for me, I didn't put 2 and 2 together to realize I could be doing both of these things. Like, to me, it was like, this class is here and the other class is there. It's apples and oranges. But I do think it's important. So for a lot of our teachers, I've witnessed them melding these worlds a bit. Because, like, for instance, we have teachers in Maine that teach at schools with 200 kids, but they're K through 12 public schools because they're so rural. And so you have like a 3rd grader on trumpet, and a 5th grader that just wants to sing, and a 6th grader that plays violin, and an 8th grader that plays guitar, and a 12th grade drummer, and they're all in class together. And there's only 13 kids in the class. And they're like, what am I going to do? Well, the similar sorts of things can happen in orchestras, and they can happen in concert bands. And I actually think it's really strong to have projects that incorporate some of these skills. What do I mean by that? Making them use their ear a little bit more, making them use their skills to understand style, and come up with their own arrangements. Like, if I was doing concert band right now, and I was thinking back to my concert band, those kids could play pretty well. They could see music on a page, and they could react to me conducting them. But the thing that most of them probably didn't do as well is like hear a melody and be able to write it down and improvise on it and to add in flourishes. And then if I said to them, hey guys, how are we going to turn this into a different genre entirely? Like, even in the concert band setting, like, maybe we're playing something and it sounds very much like Percy Granger. Can I make it sound a little bit more like Holst? What are the differences between those two? Hey, how about if we want to make this sound Baroque? Because guess what? There wasn't any Baroque concert band. So let's take this and make it sound like Mozart wrote it in the classical era, or even, like a Renaissance motet. Like, I can see so many of these things where you're still doing the same thing. You're taking something maybe the students are already familiar with, like a song they're already performing and playing. And you're taking maybe just 16 bars of it, maybe one section of it, and you're saying, let's make this sound like another piece we're playing. What are the skills we need to do? Can we examine this? Can we use our ears to figure it out? Can we notate it? Can we, all these different aspects to it? But it's putting a little bit more of it on student-centered instruction. It's a lot more of a time commitment because, you're going to have to start small, probably, right? I would like to think of it, I often say that, like, my kids, I'm a Bach aficionado. Like, Bach is my guy. It's hard to underestimate how much I enjoy Bach. Like, it's always, I love the guy. And so, like, of course, I'm thinking, what kids love? Kids love fugues. So all my students are going to work on fugues. Every concert band season, we're playing at least one fugue, which is ridiculous. Kids struggle with fugues at the outset. They're so complicated. They're so hard. And like, so what I'd start doing is I'd start like adding like hip hop drum beats behind them while we were playing it. And then all of a sudden, those kids now are like so into fugues, and they're not getting lost in the dotted eighth tied to 2/16th note, and all the contrapuntal stuff going on. So,
I've totally done that, by the way. I've
yeah.
turned on like a funk drum beat over the top of their, standard of excellence, book 1, line 36 or whatever.
Oh, and please do, because the standards of excellence could use that. I am also a standards of excellence aficionado. I did use that with my beginning instruments, and I wish I had done that, because I bet you my kids would have liked it a lot more.
Oh, they love it. And you know what they really, really love is when I trot my little self back to the drum set
and start jamming on it.
And I start playing the drum set, and I'm like, "Okay, guys, here we go, number 48. Geek, geek, geek. Here we go."
Another controversial statement. Every music teacher should be able to jam on a drum set.
Oh, no, I totally agree. And I wish that I was better at it, to be honest.
Me too. I mean, absolutely. It's just so fun. And it's you get so much, street cred with your students being able to play a good drum beat.
Okay. I need to backtrack and play a little devil's advocate with you. Okay.
Let's do it. Sure.
So you said that doing these things, I mean, I totally get it, right? Trying new things and doing smaller groups and rearranging and, learning improvisation. Like, that's all fine and good. But I see my kids 40 minutes a day, 3 times a week. And when do I prepare literature to take to festival? And how do I get them ready for a concert if we spend all of our class time, doing these quote unquote enrichment activities, as you might be suggesting? So how do we still fulfill all of those expectations of us and yet flip our classroom to the point where the kids are super duper engaged?
Well, look, there's a lot of answers here. I'm going to do the less, the more confrontational one. If you're a teacher that's taking your kids to festival and doing all that and getting superiors, that's fantastic. Is that the goal of music education? I don't know. Let's look at the national standards. Are you creating? I don't know if you are. Are you performing? Absolutely. Check that box. Got the performing done. Are you responding? I don't know. I mean, I guess so. There's some revision in what you're doing. How well can your students speak about their piece? Do they understand it contextually? So like, to me, sure, we talk about these standards, but especially in the old national standards, where if you looked at them, they're very, very specific. Like, by 11th grade, students should be able to compose a 4-part chorale. It was like, oh, that's really specific, like things like that. And, or they giving a melody, they should be able to write, an answer for like a short minuet, it was like, what's going on here? Most of my kids in 9th grade have never played an instrument before. But so I think there's been this unwritten rule that as long as we're going to festival and winning superiors and my marching band's performing well, all the other musical stuff doesn't matter. If you can play the right note at the right time, you're going to learn stuff. And by the way, I did that. And my students learned how to be musical. They learned how to phrase. They learned all the elements of music. They got much better facility on their instrument. Like, those are all really, really important things. To me, it's just a matter of, once again, are we really reaching the students in the way they need to be comprehensive musicians? Like, are they creating? Are they not creating? So, yeah, look, the hard answer is this. That every minute you spend is used wisely. And if you don't change your goals, or if you don't compromise somewhere, it's not like what you can say is, hey, principal, I just got introduced to this modern band thing. I've got this one class that I want to start doing some of it in, but I'm already using every minute possible to make the best musicians I can. So, hey, I got an idea. Why don't we just make my classes half an hour longer? Like, you can't do that. That's unreasonable, right? What you have to do is make cuts somewhere. But what I might argue is that using some of these skills, having them work more on being creative and excited and using their ears to learn how to improvise, like, these are all skills that are going to make them better musicians and potentially in the long run. And what I like to think of it, like, I'll equate it to typing. And anybody that can't type now, it's like, hey, I got an idea. If you spend a month and every day for a month, you work for half an hour on your typing skills, a month later, you're going to save, hours and hours a month in your life because you can type fast now. But it's about making the investment at the beginning. It's hard to make that investment. It's like, well, where am I going to find time to do this? It's about right now versus making a long-term investment. So what I would say is, yeah, you might struggle, especially at the beginning, taking time away from rehearsals. Maybe this year your kids might not get a superior. Maybe they get stuck with an excellent, or maybe they're behind. They don't learn all 4 pieces. They only learn 3, or maybe they do, but maybe they do that. But what we might find is instead they're better prepared for the long term. They have better skills, more well-rounded skills musically. They can hear music better. They're more excited to practice their instrument at home. I mean, that's the big one for me is practice time. Like, I don't know. Most of the musicians I really know, love, and respect. Like one of them I just saw recently, and he was asked by someone in the audience at a Q&A, hey, so like, you're a really accomplished guitar player. So like when you go home, do you still practice your scales? And what do you do for your warm-ups? And he was like, I have never in my life done any of exercises or scales. I literally had this song that I wanted to learn on guitar. So I bought a guitar and I learned it. And then I wanted to learn another and I did. And then the songs just got harder and harder and I got better and better. And that's what I've done with my life. And like, that is, when I listen to people talk about the tricks they use to get their kids to practice, I'm like, no, I'm never going to do that. It's not going to be homework. It's not going to be an assignment. They're going to practice because they want to practice.
Yeah, I totally got rid of practice charts entirely. I don't track their practice. I give them fun music that they want to play. Even our festival music, they just enjoy it. And then we occasionally do a playing test, so I have something to enter in on the grades.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the one really student-centered thing I did when I taught my concert bands was, at the end of one semester, we'd have like 2 weeks before, whatever graduation, et cetera, and we'd just sight read. We'd sight read for a couple of weeks, and then they would choose the repertoire for the next year. Like they'd be like, oh, this one I really like, this one I didn't really dig. Like, so that's partially student-centered, I would think. It doesn't. What we do doesn't have to be popular music. I think that's really important. There's nothing in our core values as an organization that talks about popular music. So it doesn't have to be a modern band thing. It's more music as a second language. It's more the pedagogy that we care more about. But the primary thing on the pedagogy is, it should be student-centered. It should be really student-directed. So if you really want to get into the weeds, it gets tough with that. What could students do? They could say, I love this song. We could find a concert band arrangement of that song. But in that context, it's still not really modern band, say. It's still your concert band for sure. So once again, but this isn't meant to be like a replacement for everybody's marching band, concert band, orchestra. We've been doing a lot of work lately actually with orchestra teachers. We have a lot of our strings teachers that are starting to incorporate exercises like, I get sent videos of this one teacher, she made a play along for like Guns N' Roses' Sweet Child of Mine, where the kids are learning to comp over it. And I think comping is a really important word. If people don't know what comping is, it's the skill that all rhythm players in ensembles that are either jazz bands or popular music ensembles know, which is like, oh, cool, man, we're playing a C chord. I'm going to play a C chord. How am I going to play it? Well, I'm going to play an appropriate version of it, and I'm going to like choose a rhythm. And it's not written down. It just like says C chord. So they know what to do. They're making choices using their ear and their brains constantly. And so comping happens on a lot of things. And so what one of our teachers does, she's posting these videos of her kids learning how to comp in the orchestra where they're all kind of like choosing notes from the chords and be like, oh, I want to go here. Now I want to go here. And it's really interesting to see it roll out and watch it. For that teacher in particular, she teaches 4 days a week of straight, getting ready for repertoire, blah, blah, blah. And then she calls it their Fun Fridays. And like on Fridays, that's what they do. And the kids at first were actually a little reticent. They're like, no, can you just give us the notes to the song? And she was like, no, that's not what this is about. And then like now they're really starting to loosen up and enjoy jamming, which is big, It's fun to jam.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Well, I have to congratulate you, by the way. You're the director of the Modern Band All Honor Ensemble.
All national honor ensemble for modern band. Yeah.
So what's that going to look like?
Oh man, I actually have no idea. I mean, I'll be honest. I'm a little nervous, quite nervous. No, I'm really excited about it. It's such an amazing opportunity. So, I'm doing that, and actually before that, in about a month, I'm leading the in Miami. They're having an all city modern band. They're actually having 2 of them. It's only elementary school students, and I think I have 42 kids in each ensemble. It's going to be crazy. And it's so different because the all national one's high school students from all over the country. So it's a little bit different because we're the only ensemble where you didn't have to be part of your all state ensemble. Because guess what? There's currently no all-state modern bands, even though I suspect that will probably change. So any student who's grades 9 through 11 can actually apply to be part of this ensemble. It's going to be about 20 kids. Sometimes maybe all 20 will play together. Sometimes we'll pare it down. Maybe there'll be 12 for one song or 8 for another song or whatever. And we're just going to do a lot of diverse repertoire. They keep saying to me, "Oh, are you going to choose a repertoire?" I said, "No." They said, "Well, we need to choose it soon." No, that flies in the face of this. And the NAFME people have been tremendous with this. It's been really an honor to get to work with them. And I understand they're kind of like, well, we just got to make sure, we got to get the rights to the songs, which we definitely do. And we have to have enough time to do that, to put on the concert. But I'm really looking forward to this because I want it to be as collaborative as possible. I'd love one of the students at least to have a composition they write that we play together. And it's going to be wild. And it's funny because I was looking at all the other ensembles and I think they're fantastic. Last year they added a classical guitar one. This year it's being led by Bill Swick, who his kids and my kids used to play together at festivals. And he's just a tremendous human being and such a good director. So I'm really excited. It's quite an honor, but I'm looking at all these other guys and there's repertoire that they have to do for their audition and you have to do this, and they give you stuff. And they asked me and I was like, I don't know, man, they just got to shoot a video where they're playing a couple different styles because I don't care if they're virtuosic. I really don't. I care that they have good stage presence and I care that they play well in an ensemble. So, I had some kids writing, "Oh, hey, would it be cool if I did this song?" And they're writing the most virtuosic pieces. And I'm writing them, I'm like, if you give me 3 songs like that, I'm not interested. You give me one song where you show me how good you are, and the rest of them show me how you can groove. Show me how you can play with others, show me that you can fit into the ensemble. Because ensemble is not going to be, 20 kids on stage that are all vying for the spotlight American Idol style. This is going to be 20 kids that know what it's like to put on a show. And let's face it, that's what popular music and modern band is. It's a show. And you got to look cool when you do it. You got to have stage presence. You have to have charm. You have to exude confidence when you're up there. So, this should be exciting. It's hopefully won't be, a bunch of guitar players playing a billion notes a second while looking at their hands. It's going to be really accomplished, cool kids from all over the country.
Well, I'm super excited for you and to get to watch how that progresses. And yeah, that's going to be amazing.
Our conference is a 4-day conference in Fort Collins, Colorado. We think it's relatively affordable compared to many of the other conferences. We're doing it at Colorado State University, and it's 4 days of complete hands-on music making. In other words, you're not listening to people deliver papers or talk about their experiences teaching. That's not what we do. We do things. So you could be in a session on how to play the bass, or how to get your kids to have better stage presence, or how to work with students that are all different levels in the same class, or just all sorts of really cool, unique stuff goes on there. And we'll have about, I think, 72 different sessions. And we know it's successful because we chart how many of our teachers go to every single session because they check into the sessions they go to. And I think that we had 97% of the participants went to every single session, which is, there's no way that happens anywhere else. And it's not just teachers. We usually have about 400 teachers and about 150 other people, which could be college professors, could be district arts administrators. Some of our partners come out there, people in the music education landscape that also want to talk. Our great friends at the Rock and Roll Forever Foundation often hold a session. I know they're going to do one this year. Some people from Pearl are going to come out and do some drumming. So there's a lot of really cool things to do. And then that's what you do all day. And then at night we do we have concerts every single night. And I know people are like, "Oh, cool. Who's in the concerts?" The teachers are. You guys are. The participants get up on stage and jam. And that's what we do. And every night it's a different kind of jam. And it's super fun. So it's it's really good. It's not for people that like to sleep because we stay up late and we wake up early. And that's just people do that on their own because they want to be there and they don't want to miss anything. But also, we always have some guests, and some of our special guests this year, I know we were lucky enough to get back Victor Wooten, who was a guest of ours about 3 years ago and blew my mind as well as everybody else's, just talking about his views on music education and playing bass and jamming with the teachers. And also, we're really lucky this year. We're going to have Mark Wood, who, if you don't know, he was one of the founding members of the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, like the rock violinist, just a god on the violin. And he's going to come and play with Victor, and then they're going to do sessions. They're going to do sessions as well. So it should be really, really fun. So if you want more information, I'm sure you can go to the show notes or something like that on how you could find out more about it.
Yeah, in fact, you can go to the show notes page for this episode on smartmusic.com/blog. I'll have all kinds of really fun links on there, like to Jam Zone and about the Modern Band Summit.
There'll be a link up there too, where if you're looking for if Little Kids Rock is holding a workshop near you, because we do workshops all over the country. I know that, like, for instance, in the next few weeks, we have some going on in Milwaukee, in Boston, in Anaheim. So in a lot of different spots, we actually have workshops, and you can find out, you can get on our list, which would just send you an email if there's a workshop coming near you.
Awesome. Well, Scott, this has been a total pleasure and a great episode. So thank you so much.
Oh, well, I'll be the judge of that when I hear it on the back end here,
I might have to do some really thorough editing. Is that what you're saying?
Trouble I get in with my boss is like, you said what? Oh, I don't know. We'll find out. I'm looking forward. This is great. Thank you so much for inviting me to be on here.
You bet.
Now, don't forget that there is bonus content for this episode. I got Scott to talk to me again and just go over the 5 hypotheses of music as a second language. It is so valuable and so worth the few minutes it will take to listen to. It's just your personal short lesson about this philosophy that could totally alter your teaching. Trust me, I've been a skeptic since I first heard of Little Kids Rock.
I have to confess that ever since I started to get to know the Little Kids Rock trained teachers and the philosophies we talked about today, that has started to transform my own teaching. And I was already using a lot of the same concepts already. It really is about the students. It really is about engaging them on their level with repertoire that they connect with. I really did switch the repertoire we took to festival. And I really am planning to attend the Modern Band Summit this year. And you should too. We could meet up, have coffee. Learn more by visiting littlekidsrock.org. They have thousands of free resources available right on their website, ready for you to implement. But the best way is to attend a Little Kids Rock workshop if you can. While you're thinking about summer professional development opportunities, I highly recommend the International Music Education Summit. This entirely online conference now boasts more than 66 workshops and clinics for professionals like yourself. This includes a sing-along reading session with Andy Beck, a live band demonstration with Anthony Dahl, incorporating non-traditional strings like guitars and ukulele with Graham Hepburn, founder of Quaver, plus sessions from world-class educators from around the globe, and at least one live stream performance. It's a unique and cutting-edge way for you to get professional development right at home. Use the code PODCAST at checkout to save 20% off your registration. Remember to check out the show notes for this episode for all the links we talked about and to learn more about Smart Music's built-in notation tool. Discover how it can help streamline your learning, teaching, and assessment. While you're online, be sure to subscribe to this podcast and give us a 5-star rating. It helps us spread the word to music educators like you. It could make the difference in somebody's entire teaching career. And as always, my friends, keep doing the amazing work that you're doing, engaging your students on their level in a myriad of ways that are touchstones for them. And keep teaching on.